I'm so happy to speak to Ambassador Mathilde Makuntabana about the space program of Rwanda, which is amazing. Well, welcome to National Security News.
Thank you so much, and thank you for giving me this platform to talk about the space in Rwanda.
Well, can we ask you, what were the factors that led to your nation to pursue a robust space program, a space agenda or a space program?
I would say that the development of our space program is a part of a bigger vision of building our nation, especially on a better, on a better level. We started when we set a strategy for transformation for our country, economic transformation. That is within a bigger vision again of saying that in Rwanda, you mentioned a few minutes ago when we were talking about where we came from, but the choices we made and the vision we set, initially it was Vision 2020, then Vision 2050, and then they were cut in small pieces on how we can do the economic development part. But part of it and the philosophy driving all our actions are based on three things. One is as a nation to remain united, to work together, to be accountable to each other, but also to think big. So the space agency is part of that. If we are behind in a certain area of development, especially given that some of the infrastructure were non-existent 30 years ago, we need to leapfrog, including leapfrogging into space. But it was not just because of that, it's also because of the benefits of space. The space program can help in our socio-economic development. Yeah.
So can I ask you, how big is Rwanda thinking in the space sector?
We are thinking big because space is going to be, and it is, it's playing a key role in many different programs, whether it's in our agriculture, whether it's in weather-related type of incidents, whether it's in education. So it's a part of a bigger picture. Here we were talking about the Artemis Accords and what it can be when nations are collaborating on space. It's huge, both for not just for what you can use it for, but also for economic development. Because especially when you look at the downstream benefits of space, they are, they adapt to all the things that are drivers of our economy. Wherever you are looking at, environment, we are talking about health, we are talking about agriculture, like what I was saying, but also industrialization and the communication sector and so on.
Well, you mentioned the Artemis Accords. Along with Nigeria, Rwanda became the first African country to sign the accords. So what does that mean for you to be able, these accords?
For us, again, it's because space, you can't do space in a vacuum or as a single entity. Space has to belong to a bigger picture. And this is what we have done to become part of this collective of nations that have come together to embrace the same abiding principles of how space could be used for the human development. Yesterday I loved what the administrator was saying, Nelson. He said, in space, this is where the solidarity of humankind can happen. And that's how we see it, because this is a place, usually you don't think about race, you don't talk about geography, you don't talk about even political party. This is a place where you are all really, you have a unity of purpose. And this is an amazing thing and also very exciting to be part of this kind of picture.
Is that how you see space diplomacy, the role it could play?
Yes, and it's big in diplomacy because it brings the friendship. Again, looking at the example of what we heard yesterday, even Russia and the United States, for someone, when the first astronaut died, the one who went to do his eulogy was the American one, even though they were in a Cold War. But when you are in space, you are looking at the same thing. You are looking at the value of our universe and where we are going and how we can all use that space. It's a space that is open for humanity. It's not for bickering and for many different things. But there are abiding principles we have to come by, and that's why we are part of the people who have signed the Artemis Accords, because also there are some values that come with being in that kind of partnership in space.
Well, is Rwanda looking for partnerships? Because you also have partnerships with Poland and the United Arab Emirates.
Right, yeah. It's an open space, and we build those kind of friendships, and we see, because again, partly because especially as emerging nations, you can't go alone in space. You can't just, even when the United States was starting in space in 1960s, they had to go with what already Russia had built. And they were able to bring that collaboration, even though it was in a very difficult environment. So collaboration is key. So for us, it's even more fundamental when you think about what, I mention it because it's also competing with other type of priorities in our region. So being in a place where you can bring collaboration, partnerships, viable ones, they don't just go in an abstract. They go with other type of partnerships that is studied among those nations, like Poland. Not too long ago, we just opened our first embassy there. And the friendship has been growing. And the president of Poland came to Rwanda. So it has to be built on long-standing type of relationship where you can actually say, also in partnership with space, in space we are going to be able to lead that kind of thing.
Well, we can't speak to you without speaking. It's 30 years since you marked the anniversary of the genocide, and we talked about how that experience shapes a nation. Can you give us some thoughts on
that? 30 years ago, it was one of the hardest periods of our history. The genocide against Tutsi almost shook us to the core, because we, as a nation, we were reduced to ashes, pretty typically. But I have to say, what kept us from dying completely is also what is still keeping us. We built resilience. We had an amazing leadership. I'm so glad that, for instance, this afternoon in space, they are going to talk about governance. Rwanda has achieved this milestone because of good governance. And it came from that vision, but also to the choices we made after that tragedy you are talking about, because people who had written off Rwanda as dead. So they were saying, in the best of circumstances, you'll be maybe like under the protectorate of UN forever. Because we were completely dead, you are thinking about 1 million people dead within 3 months. In 100 days, you are talking about more than 3 million people leaving the country. And all the people affected by what happened, because it was almost like an intimate type of violence. People knew who were killing them. So we were called to come and reconcile. And all Rwandans took the stand to say, we are going to remain united no matter what. We are going to try to take chaff and grain and mold the nation. So this took a long journey that we are still pursuing, because you had to bring together people to be able to face their history. This is why, for instance, last week, even throughout now, we are doing the commemoration of 30 years. The majority of our young people were born after genocide, but their parents were affected by it. Their country was affected by it. But more importantly, when we talk about development, I think it also built a stronger nation, because once we decided to remain together, we also took all the teaching tools, all the mechanism to keep us together, but also to produce together, because we wanted to go beyond and to make a nation that was way better than we have ever seen in our lives. So this is why we say we always think big. This is why we're the first country to sign the Artemis Accords. The president came here during the Africa Summit. He was the first one to put this. So, and it's not just to portray ourselves for anything. It's because they are really, truly bringing progress to our nation, and they are taking our vision, the vision of becoming a high-income country, to fruition. So it's a step by step, but it's a part of a bigger picture. So you can't see space in an abstract. It's a part of the entire vision of our strategy for transformation for the nation.
Ambassador Makuntabana, thank you so much for speaking to us, and thanks for sharing that.